Jody. So today's talk is going to be about things that I didn't know when I started my journey in powerlifting. So I started learning things that I didn't know very early. I suppose my mum was always into making sure we were eating quite healthy. And when I was younger, I had an ambition to play soccer at a high level. And so she used that to manipulate me. But I didn't learn really what she was doing until many years later when she told me. She gave me this book, it was probably early high school, and it was called The Strategies of the Champions. And it had a lot of stuff in there about Olympic athletes, and particularly what a lot of the Russians were doing in as far as their diet went. And many years later I found out that it was because that I used to like putting a lot of salt on my food. And my mum would always say, you know, you shouldn't eat so much salt, but as a kid you don't listen to your mum, do you? So she bought me this book, and I read the book, and the book said that. And I changed. But along the way I also discovered a lot of other things in there, like they were talking about, you know, how the Western diet was too high in acidic foods and we should have more alkaline-based foods, and this was something that I was reading as a kid, and I started looking at what was alkaline and what wasn't. And it was a fascinating process. You know, some of the guys in the powerlifting club I used to rabbit on about millet and buckwheat, because it had said in this book they were the only two alkali grains. And so I'd always have this puffed millet for breakfast, and the other guys would go, "Still eating that puffed millet stuff?" I'm like, "Yep." So yeah, there was lots of things that I learned along the way. So today I'm just going to give you some insights into the things that were really helpful in that journey. But before we get into that, some humour. Now, if you're going to be doing something, you really need to be planning to be doing it for a long time. Otherwise, you know, it's really not going to give you the results. And you know, this here is an environment where we can be that little angel who's set up himself with his lounge chair and his TV, and he's set in to be there for a while. So if you keep coming along to these environments, you know, that's the good talk you're going to get in one ear. You might freak the other guy out, which is great, that's the idea. But also, this is one of my favourite quotes that I heard on a CD, and it was, the chief cause, this is the number one cause of failure and unhappiness is trading what you want most for what you want right now. So I'm bringing into that a sense of, you know, responsibility. You know, if we've got things that we really, really want, but we take shortcuts, and you know, right now that chocolate bar looks really good, you know, or that muffin looks good, then we're sacrificing what we really want in our health. So it's a matter of making choices for what we really want, not a short-term taste or whatever. And as far as that goes, you know, if you really want success, you know, having a goal of something is great. And in powerlifting, we used to always sit down after one comp. I would set the goals of what I was going to lift in 3 months' time at the next comp with my coach. We'd set targets, but that only took like 5 minutes to do that. What then took an hour was designing the strategy of our training, the process that I was going to commit to for those next 3 months to make that happen. And then every day that I went into the gym, it was the same thing. It was, this is the process that I'm following to make it happen. And as well with what I was eating, you know, I had to pay very close attention to everything I ate, because it was part of the process of success. And in powerlifting, you compete in weight divisions. If I turned up and I was 0.1 grams overweight, either you're out, see you later, go back home, or you do whatever is necessary in the time that you have to make weight. Which was very interesting sometimes. There were times when my coach said, "Here's some plastic garbage bags, put them over yourself, here's a tracksuit, go out in the oval and jog around and spit until you make weight." I only ever did that once. So now, if you're going to have success long term, you need to commit to a process. You know, we've mentioned that the health program that we have, I learned a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about next from those sessions that we have. You know, we've got some great professionals that speak, and I learned things that I really didn't know that was so valuable when I came back from my retirement. I went, wow, I wish I knew this stuff before. So we'll get into some of that shortly. Let's try it again. This is when the technology breaks down and we have the backup. So this again brings in responsibility. Because in powerlifting, we had often ASADA, which is Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority, that would speak to us before our national titles. And one of the things that they said one year was that we have a zero tolerance policy on performance-enhancing drugs. And basically what that meant was, they said, you are responsible for whatever's in your body, whether you know how it got there or not. And we're like, oh. But that made me think, that's quite a good philosophy for life, We need to be responsible for what we're taking into our body. And just having bury the head in the sand is like, well, I don't know. It doesn't really cut it as an excuse. Yeah. You need to do your own research and look into what My mum, again, taught me a great lesson when I was a kid. Whenever we went shopping with her, she would make us read the ingredients of anything that was in a packet before we were allowed to buy it. And if it had any artificial colours or artificial flavours, we knew the rule was, sorry, can't have it. And, if you had these guys following you around all the time, would you pay a little bit more attention to what you put in your mouth? I mean, as an athlete, we had a hotline that we could call. If we went to a doctor and they prescribed us with a medication, then the first thing I would do before I stuck any of that in my mouth was call this hotline and say, can I take this? Because if it was something that I couldn't take and I got busted, see you later. Career over, 2 years banned. Wow. And there was a really good, he was a football player, he had an injury in football, turned to powerlifting. In 2009 he won the best lifter at the Australian Championships, and then unfortunately tested positive for a banned stimulant, which just happened to be in some pre-workout drink that he was taking, and he just didn't know that was in it. 2-year ban. So, we as athletes have to be very aware of everything we're taking. I think it's a very good guide for everybody to be aware of what you're putting in your body. The other thing I learned, which was the importance of protein and having the right amounts of protein at the right times throughout the day. At one point in time, the university decided to do a study on the powerlifting club, on what we were eating. So I had to keep a food journal for a whole week, which, if you're committing to a process, that's a good thing to do. Probably longer than a week, but for this study, we had to keep a food journal for a week. And the university analysed everything I ate, and they sat me down and said, Ray, you're protein deficient. And I went, really? I'm eating this, isn't it? I went, yes, but I didn't know that, say 100 grams of meat, there's only about 20 grams of protein. That was something I didn't know. It was like there was other lifters that were taking these little things of protein powder and thinking, what's the point of that? And there was this tiny little thing. But in that 20 grams of powder, there's almost 18 grams of protein. Yeah. So, and another thing I learned, I suppose, from CSI RO scientist that speaks on Thursday, often Rusty Mark, he talks about that the Institute of Sport guideline is that not just athletes, but everyone should be having about 10 to 20 grams of proteins at least 6 times a day, that we should have about 1 to 2 grams of protein per body weight. And when I looked at what I was eating, it was no surprise that I'd been training for 4 or 5 years and hadn't put on any muscle mass because I just wasn't eating enough protein. Recently, I mentioned last time I was here, my dad came and he said, look, I want to put on a bit of muscle mass. He's always been an athlete, he's always been lean, so much so that he gets a little bit ridiculed about it sometimes. And I said, that's just because everyone else is jealous, Dad. Just be happy with that. He had an operation for a hernia, and the doctor said to him, oh, you've got a really flat stomach, that was really easy to operate on. And that's the best thing anybody's ever said about that. But he's always done long distance sort of running, and still as a almost 70 sort of thing, he's winning his age championship thing and doing really well. But recently he said, look, I want to put on some more muscle mass. And I said, well, you've got to change the training that you're doing, which I spoke about last week, because if you look at long distance runners, they're all generally pretty lean. And you look at sprinters who are doing sort of weight and power exercises, they've got a lot more muscle mass. But also his diet, and Mum was on the phone as well, and she's like, oh, but I did eat lots of protein. Yes, Mum, I know what you... I was on that diet for many, many years. It's not enough protein if you want to put on muscle. So, we had that conversation. And so we started to eat a little bit more protein. But also, for people that are looking at weight loss as well, most people eating way too high in carbs is not just for putting on muscle. I learned again from Jamie, who speaks on Thursday, that protein triggers a hormone which is almost like the opposite of insulin. So insulin says, take sugar out of the blood and store it as fat, whereas protein triggers something that's called glucagon, which says basically, let's burn that fat that we have because we've got plenty of protein coming in. So that's why it's important in the particular program that we teach people to have small amounts of protein every time you're eating. Not to eat fruit by itself. Though fruit can be healthy, but if you eat it by itself, it spikes your blood sugar. So there's method to all these things that are in specific programs. What else do I learn? Water. Now, I always love water. Again, thanks, Mum. She taught me have 2 glasses of water when I wake up in the morning, and plenty of water throughout the day, and that's going to turn me into a waterholic. So, I know where all the bathrooms are in all the shopping centres because I need to go on a regular basis. But what I didn't know was the importance of the type of water that we're drinking. So when I grew up, we were just drinking straight tap water, and I started coming in this environment. I learned about different ways of purifying water, and having a background as a mechanical engineer who does R&D on products and all sorts of product testing. The first thing I did was look at all of the tests that they'd run on these things, and I went, wow, they have done an enormous amount of tests. It's rated to treat 5,000 litres of water, and they'd actually tested 5,000 litres of water contaminated with cryptosporidium and all this other nasty stuff, and they actually did that. And then test the water that comes out after 5,000 litres have gone through this thing. Wow, okay. Other than that, it just tastes better. I mean, I've had wine for 10 years now, and I've become a water snob. Tap water, I can smell it. You go to a coffee shop or somewhere and they put tap water in, it's like, oh God. I'm just addicted to good quality water. So, and water plays such a vital part. If you're trying to get healthy, you've got to flush out toxins and things. So if you are going on a specific program to get healthy, you need a lot of water in there to flush out all the stuff that's coming out of the fat that's been stored in there for many, many years. Omega-3s. Now that's something I had never heard of. Even through my first stint in powerlifting, no one told me about them. But when I started coming along to some of the health workshops that we have, I learned that, again, most Western diets are too high in omega-6, and it's a pro-inflammatory fat. And omega-3 is an anti-inflammatory, and that it's very important. And one day, after I've been training for many, many years, I was having a lot of pain in my elbows, which is sort of an inflammation, but also a nerve pain. And I was just chatting to one of the other powerlifters who was been doing it a lot longer than I had, and won many national titles. I think about 16 national titles. He was older than me, been doing it for longer, and still competing. And he said to me, well, are you taking omega-3s? I went, yeah, of course I am. He said, how many? I said, I'm taking 3 a day. And he went, yeah, that's a normal person's dose. That's just for normal health. If you're taking it, for a specific sport to reduce inflammatory, he says, I take 12 a day. Oh, 12? So I don't take that many now, but I went through a period where I had that pain where I was taking 12 a day. And also eating lots of fish. Unfortunately, I then learned from another book that a lot of the fish, even the salmon and things like that, are supposed to be high in omega-3. If they're farmed, then they're not as high in omega-3 as they would otherwise. So, with your supplements, you need to be sort of aware of where it comes from and make sure it is actually a good quality, that it is actually omega-3, not something that's farmed and who knows what's in there. And as far as omega-3s go, there's a really good book here by Dr. Duke Johnson, which talks a lot about all sorts of things. It's a great read, but it also goes into how inflammation is the cause of a lot of the chronic issues that we have. And omega-3 is one of the, it's only one, there's a whole lot of things in there, so I'm not going to go through the whole book and grab it yourself. There's a whole lot of stuff in there around what you should do and what to look for in good supplements as well. And I also learned that it's the source that matters. As an athlete, I was always looking for supplements and things like that to take to help improve my diet. I was eating really well, but I was looking for that extra little boost on top because as an athlete, we're really stressing our bodies, and we need to recover. That's one of the biggest problems. I mean, one of the main reasons that performance-enhancing drugs like steroids and things like that work for those that take them, particularly in strength sports, is because they help them recover faster and they can train harder. So, some of the guys would look at, say, Russian training programs for powerlifting, and they'd go, how on earth do they do all this training? So, well, because they're on stuff that they shouldn't be on, so you probably shouldn't do that type of training because it's not going to work. But as far as what you need to look at the source. So if you're looking at things that are, farmed fish for your omega-3s or stuff that's made in the lab, how do you know what's in there? And I went, I've never sort of been asked that question. What if you're getting things from organic farms? Where you're eating food that's been turned into a supplement. So that's sort of what I started looking for. Because I wanted to know what I was putting in my body as an athlete. Again, we're tested, so it has to be a good quality stuff. And there's a really good book that I discovered, which was called The Secret of Supplements. The good, the bad, and the totally terrific. And there's a series of 10 questions in here. I'm not going to read all 10, just the first 3. On what to look for. So the first question is your multi-supplement plant-based product that includes vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients? Well, what are phytonutrients? I've never heard of them before either. So phytonutrients is plant-based stuff that's not just the vitamins and the minerals, it's all the other stuff that's actually in the plants that the scientists haven't figured out what it is yet. And they can't put it in something made in the lab because they don't know what it is. And I kind of trust nature a little bit better, as someone who's been an engineer and knows a lot about scientists. Question 2. If the multi-supplement is plant-based, is it derived from a variety of plants? And in the book it goes through explaining why these things might be important, but can anybody think why that might be important? Exactly, different phytonutrients. You want different things coming into your body, not just the one thing. If the multi-supplement is plant-based and derived from a variety of plants, does the manufacturer own its own land and grow, harvest and concentrate its own plants? Now why would that be important? Quality control? Yep. Control of the soil. I mean, if you don't own your own farms, how do you know what's in that soil? If you don't know what's in the soil, what's going to end up in your plants? You can't control what they're spraying on things. So those were some good questions that I hadn't even considered. And I went, wow, okay, I better start looking into what I put in my body. The next thing I learned was there's actually things out there that are actually certified for sport. Now for most people, you may not really care about that, but if it's certified for sport, then it's probably going to be good for you as well. So this is just a table I got from a company, NSF, that do a whole lot of different certifications. The water purifier that I use, they also have certified that to a whole bunch of different international standards. But they talk about there's 3 different levels. There's a good manufacturing process, which is a fairly base level. Not all supplement companies adhere to that. There's a few out there that probably do. Then there's product ingredient certification, so they're certifying that the ingredients are all good. They're certified for sport basically means that they have tested that all the substances that are banned substances for sport are not in there. So as an athlete and a person who wants to consume things that are good for them, you're guaranteed that there's no stuff in there that's going to make you fail the drug test. So for me that was very important. For other people it may not be as important. I still think it is important because it just shows that it's certified to a much higher level. So I'm not sure whether they have that certification in Australia, but I know where I get them from in the States. The company that makes them, that lives them here, actually has that certification on a number on their multivitamins. There are 2 different types of multivitamins they have. They have it on their omega-3 and they have it on a concentrated fruits and vegetables. And that's the basis of the sort of things that I take. So back to the start again, whatever you're going to commit to a process. So if this is just giving you something to start to think about things, come along with some of the stuff that we have on Thursday night, find out more about the specific health program that we have that is a very specific process that you can commit to, and try it for a 6-week cycle, and then assess your results. And do it again for another 6-week cycle. Depending on what you want, there's a whole bunch of different aspects to it. Some people want to do the weight loss phase, some people just want to get more energy, some people want to maintain exactly what they are, some people want to put on muscle. So it can be tweaked. There's different sections of it that you can skip to depending on what you want to achieve. So find out what you want to achieve, but then commit to the process. I'd like to leave you with that fact that success doesn't happen in a day. It happens daily. Keep doing it again and again and again. And there's a great book called The Slight Edge, which is also a CD series which I highly recommend, which also talks about that. It's just that process. You keep doing it until you get results. Cheers.